Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Creating Ads, which are non-ads portion of the Sideshow's Creativity Week. I am your host, Sunita Deshpande, and today I am interviewing someone who has, I'm going to be honest, has really impressed me through the years. This person has worked as a CCO at BuzzFeed. They have worked at Facebook, and most of all, they have kind of zigged when everybody else has zagged in the advertising game, getting attention all over the world for things such as hipster traps and so much more, tourist lanes. This person's mind is just unbelievable to me. And I've always kind of said this, and I don't think he knows this. He's kind of like a Banksy that you get to see in advertising. Anyway, I am now introducing, and flattery will get me everywhere, hopefully, the wonderful, the illustrious, the unparalleled, and peerless, and former improv buddy of mine, Jeff Greenspan. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh my goodness, I feel like I should applaud. I don't know who this person is that you're introducing, but he sounds great. Can you do my eulogy, which will be appearing soon, please?
Oh my God.
Thank you. So, who's here? How do I see everybody? I can see their names, but I want to see
we have people on chat. I'm not handling the Zoom portion of this. I'm just asking you all of the questions.
I see their names. I see who's here.
So thank you so much for being here. How are you right now during the pandemic, I guess, is my first question.
I thrived during pandemics.
Are you like a thriver?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my mind has been in pandemic mode for the last 15 years. I mean, I've always been living like it's the end of the world. So now I'm just normal.
So tell me, we're going to start with the simple, basic questions on my end. How did you get into advertising? What pulled you into it? Did you start off, because I know you do stand-up comedy now,
yeah.
And we also met doing improv, but how did you get pulled into the advertising game to begin with?
You know, when I came out of college, I was working in radio. I was writing kind of on-air spots and doing weird voices and doing character work, but I was just a kid. I was 19. I didn't really think that was a job. I mean, it was barely a job, it was an internship. And then I worked at a record label. And then, you know, when I went to England for a little bit and did radio over there. And then it was time to get like a real job, and I didn't have any real discernible skills. Advertising is a great place if you have no skills. No, and I knew I wanted to make my living doing something creative or being in a creative environment, but I didn't really know what that meant. And my only idea about advertising came from this TV show that no one knows anymore called 30 Something, where they worked at an ad agency. And I'm like, they seem like they can dress the way they want, and they're making money. Like, I really had no idea about the business, but I pursued getting my foot into the door of ad agencies. And I started as an account guy at Young and Rubicam.
I did not know that about you. You were an account person?
Yes, I had hair and suits and ties. We used to wear ties.
I love that. I had no idea that you were an account person.
Neither did Young and Rubicam. They couldn't find me. I wasn't doing any of my work. I was always hanging out in the creative department.
Wait, what did you work on? What clients?
The U.S. Postal Service.
Okay.
And so I didn't even realize there were different.
I can't believe that.
I didn't realize there were different departments within an ad agency. My idea of an ad agency was everybody kind of. I had just had no clue about how an agency functioned. So very quickly I realized I don't want to be on the account side. But I had no portfolio. I had nothing. And you know, I took a class at this. Basically, what happened was I got held up at gunpoint, and when I lived in Astoria.
Wait, and, really? Like you actually? This is like not a metaphor. You like actually got held up?
Literally, yeah, and it's fantastic. I wish I could meet him and thank him because it put a lot of things into perspective quickly about like, you know, that you don't. The way I processed that experience, at least, was that there wasn't a lot of time to get the things you want to get done. So, you know, I had to go to school. So I took a night class at the School of Visual Arts with Adam Chasnow. And that led to me getting a job at, all right, this is kind of a cool story. I was working at this place called Frankfurt Balkheim, which doesn't exist anymore. They're awesome people. They were a design firm, agency, web design place, way before people were even doing web design. And I was an account guy there after I got fired from Young and Rubicam. And after I got held up, I approached the owner of the company. I said, "Listen, life's very short, and I wanted to devote myself to something creative, and I don't know what that is, but I need to quit." And he goes, "You're going to quit? Like, what are you going to do for money?" And I said, I guess I'll wait tables. He goes, "This doesn't sound like a plan." I go, "No plan. I don't want a plan. I'm just going to go with what I feel, and I feel like I should quit and I should pursue something creative. He's like, I get that you want to pursue something creative, but you have no path to get there. He's like, here's what I suggest. I suggest you take a class in something, pottery, painting. I would suggest copywriting because like you're already in the business and you're funny. He's like, so maybe you could write ads. Mm-hmm. He's like, so why don't you take a class in something, and then 3 months after your class is over, I'll fire you. And that way, at least you'll get benefits, and that'll give you time to figure out what you want to do. And this was such a huge gift. I mean, I had some idea of how big of a gift it was, but now that I'm 50, I understand it more.
Was this like a mentor then, kind of like person for you?
No, he was a guy who owned the ad agency. I had a relationship with him. It was a small company. The company was like 60 people. We were like a family. We worked in a 3-level townhouse on East 58th Street. And it was, the early 90s, and it was a cool place. And a lot of people who worked there came from working with a guy named Tibor Kalman at a place called M&Co. People might know Tibor from his stuff that you could buy at the MoMA, like the watch that only has the number 5 on it. Or that's a crumbled up newspaper, or the umbrella you can buy at the MoMA that has a blue sky on the inside. He was a really wonderful designer and a great thinker. And so anyway, I took this class with Adam Chasnow, and then Frankfurt Balkind made me a copywriter. I got a job at Gray. And so I got a job at Gray as a copywriter, and I went back to Aubrey Balkind, who owned the agency. I said, thank you so much for this opportunity to take this class. I got a job at Gray. I start in 2 weeks. I'm going to be a copywriter. He's like, no. He's like, we didn't go through all this so that you can go to Gray. He's like, if you go to Gray, nothing good can happen for you. Now, this was in 1990.
Do you remember what you were working on at Gray?
I didn't. Well, here's the thing. I got the job as a copywriter. Back then, like, I don't think you were even assigned to a client. You just were a copywriter.
This was the 90s, right? Early 90s?
Yeah, this was like 96, I guess. And so he said, no, you're not going to take that job. And I go, well, I already took it. He's like, well, tell him you're not taking it. We'll make you a copywriter here. So at one point, my resume said I worked at Gray from like 12 to 12:30.
That's funny.
And then I took a class with Sal DeVito, 2 guys from Cliff Freeman and Partners, which used to be a agency in New York. Got me into the class with Sal DeVito, which was an impossible class to get into. There was like a 2-semester wait list to get into this guy's class. And I was still kind of burning from that high of being held up at gunpoint, where I'm like, I need to do this now. This all has to happen now. And so I couldn't get into the class, so I kept calling DeVito Verdi, not knowing what type of guy Sal DeVito is. He's a lovely guy, but if you've interacted with him or heard about him, he can be very abrasive. And so I kept calling the agency, asking to speak to Sal DeVito to try to get into his class. And one day he just calls me back. He's like, who the fuck are you? You've been harassing my agency. You're calling every day. And I was like, yeah, I need to be in your class. He's like, well, there's a way you do it. You get on the list. I go, no, I can't get on. I got to do it now. He's like, well, that's not how it works. And I go, listen, I'm going to find out where the class is, and I'm going to sit outside the class. And when students go to the bathroom, I'm going to ask them what the assignments are. I'm just going to do the assignment. So I'm going to be in the class, whether I'm in the class or not. He's like, yeah, that's what you think you're going to do? I go, yeah. He's like, well, if that's what you're going to do, I better take your fucking money. So he got me into the class, and I took the class, and I kept my mouth shut because he didn't like you to talk.
Yeah, you didn't want to talk about that. Yeah, no. That part.
And then he hired me on the last day of class. He hired me. He hired me. He offered me $15,000 less than I was already making, and I was making very little. And I was like, I'm already making more than that. He's like, well, that's what we pay the starting writers. So if that's what you want, I'm like, all right, He's like, listen, why don't you go back and think about what number is the least number that you could work for, and then we'll talk. Somehow he became more Italian in this.
I love this one-person show. It's great.
I figured out if I ate ramen noodles every day, like how much could I afford to lose and take this creative opportunity? And I guess at that point I was 27, and I said, well, this is going to be a really, really long journey, and so losing $15,000 now won't mean anything in the scheme of that. So I went back and I said, I'll do it for the 35,000 or whatever it was. He goes, yeah, I've been thinking about it, and yeah, you didn't really seem that enthusiastic when I offered it to you, and it's a small place, and I've only got like 6 guys, and if you don't get along with like 2 of my guys, that means like, a third of the company doesn't like you, and I don't know if you're the right fit. And I was like, listen, I've got 3 weeks of vacation coming to me at the place I work. Let me take the vacation, and I'll come work for you for free. Don't do that, by the way. This is a different time. And
well, look, I mean, this is what is so great is that I always speak about this when your name comes up in conversation. It's the concept of zigging when others are zagging, because it's like you created these opportunities for yourself. And yes, you might say now don't take that, but you wanted this so much that
I think creative people too often are asked to work for free in exchange for exposure, but we could talk about it another time. But I said, listen, if it's for 3 weeks, just to show that I fit, let me just come work there for free. And he goes, you got the job. So I wound up working there, and I met great people who I'm still friends with. And I'm really glad, because he was a tough guy. And I didn't agree with everything. Ultimately, I left because I didn't agree with all of his creative direction. But what I miss about him, and what I think the industry is missing from people like him, is people with a point of view who are willing to stick up for it, who care about the work, who are devoted to not wasting people's time, not within the agency, but also outside. Like, he would get angry if you put ideas in front of him that were not really ideas. If you presented work that was derivative, borrowed interest, a waste of his time, he would get viscerally angry. And it taught me that, if this is making Sal angry, can you imagine how many thousands of people are either just ignoring it or also being annoyed by you?
Yeah.
So like, it created this, as mean as he was perceived to be, he created, I think in a lot of students, a sense of empathy for the viewer.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too that I'd love to piggyback off of, which is it's about passion, right? It's about passion for the work and passion for what you're putting out there. And also what we were also taught at, improv and UCB and everything was the idea of top of your intelligence. So piggybacking on that, like the ad game, like what do you feel now is like the main problems, or like what really upsets you right now?
The
like
entire industry should be flushed away. That's what I think. It's these agencies the majority of them are owned by holding companies, being run by creative directors who don't really have any expertise in developing an idea or developing a team, mentoring. I don't know how they got their jobs. I can only assume that they're good people. I've been freelancing for almost a decade now.
Yeah.
And I've been at myriad agencies, and in defense of these poor people working there, they're overworked. So how can you be when you have 3 projects due in the time it would take to do one? The message that you're being sent is none of this is important. The quality doesn't matter. Let's just get it out. And so then there goes your passion. And when your passion seeps out, I think resentment seeps in. And so I think these agencies are toxic environments that are creating work that is boring and ignored. And that's totally fine. It's a paycheck. But there's no reason to be staying till 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, working on weekends. I think it's an abusive environment on the whole, because the only way these big agencies can make money is by having people work 80 hours for 40 hours work. And as long as creative people submit to it, the industry will continue to sink to the bottom. But this industry's been dying since the day I got in it. So it's gonna be around. I just wish creative people advocated for themselves more.
When do you feel like the industry really started to like go down? Because I know you're saying it when you got into it, but I do feel like there was so much work coming out at that time that was like just so fun to watch.
Yeah, the 80s and 90s were great. I don't think holding companies were
Sports Center, all that stuff. Yeah, they just looked like they were having a great time. So when do you think it really started to plummet?
I think when big corporations started buying the bigger agencies, and it became, like when they started getting gobbled up, like DeVito Verde, they were able to maintain their independence. Cliff Freeman was an independent agency that went out of business. You just couldn't compete. So it really didn't matter. And I don't think the ad industry did itself any favors by not really making a really good case about how this creative work actually has financial impact. It's this amorphous promise that brand sentiment means something. And that's where all the work that I think you're talking about, the fun work, was not about here's how much that's why Cliff Freeman, I was so surprised that they couldn't make it, because their work was not only fun and interesting and shot at the time in a very different way, but it was all about price. The pizza's this much money. The car rental is this much money. So I'm clearly not on the account side. I'm not a business guy. I try to just focus on the ideas and help companies grow their interest. But I don't know.
I felt like the efficacy was there. Like people were totally, like it was totally getting noticed. Like the ads were definitely getting noticed. So when you,
the Clios were part of the culture at one point. People cared. people also, I
Started
mean, it
to
was
care.
also, it's not fair to put it all on the doorstep of the ad agencies. I mean, the culture has changed too. When we, even in the 90s, there was more than 3 channels, but like there wasn't a segmented of a culture or a segmented of an audience.
Yeah.
So something that was a commercial could be seen and talked about by millions of people. And so I think that was just more fun. It was more culturally relevant.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this actually propels us to the next question, which was, is this what started you doing all of your mischief around the city? Like what really started to prompt it?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I mean, I was working at these agencies and I was getting paid pretty well. I was pretty lucky that I got jobs that well overpaid the rent after I made those decreases in salary. But I wasn't really getting any work produced. And I remember, like, I worked with a guy named G. Lee, and we both worked on this system. We were working at Saatchi and Saatchi on Cheerios. And G has told the story too. And we had to do like a billboard or excuse me, a print ad for all the Cheerios flavors in one ad, which should not exist. Like each of those was supposed to be its own separate brand, whatever. Let's forget the fact that they were negating their own strategy. The client said, we want an ad that shows all the boxes of the cereal, all the different flavors, and we want some headline.
Okay.
And so we came up with this line, only the holes taste the same.
Right. I remember that.
And we were really thrilled with it because, yeah, it's just a headline, but like it really did what it needed to do.
It did what it needed to do. Yeah.
And everyone was excited about it. And the client was excited about it. We're on the phone with General Mills trying to get this billboard made or whatever the hell. And then someone says, I got to say something, our studies show that it's really not about taste, it's about flavor. And that led into a 30 to 40 minute conversation about the difference between taste and flavor. At which point, like, I was like, this cannot be 12 adults with MBAs really having this conversation. And they wanted to make it, only the holes have the same flavor. I'm like, well, and in the end, what the headline became was, there's a Cheerios for everyone. And that's when I realized nothing's going to get done, at least not in the environment I was in. I'm not saying that if you weren't at Wyden and Kennedy or some other place that you could make it, but the team that I was on and the runway I was on, this plane was not taking off. And I was lucky enough to have other really talented friends in the business who wanted to do other things, and they felt stifled. And one of them, I think, is here on the chat, Hunter Fine. We started making short films. We did one that did not go as viral as The Hipster Trap, which was something that we worked on where we were both living in the East Village or the Lower East Side, and we were talking about how the area was being infested by hipsters. Yeah. We started riffing. We may have been high. Hunter was probably stoned as hell. I don't do drugs, but we were like, oh, what if you, they're like roaches, they're like bed bugs. What if you could trap them? What if you could kill them? And that led to this kind of cartoon version of a bear trap that was put in the middle of hipster-laden areas around New York City that were baited with things that hipsters loved. And like that was one of a bunch of projects that me and a bunch of friends that I worked on that seeped into the culture and got shared a lot on the internet. And the irony was that I was being paid all this money, and so were my friends at ad agencies to work on projects with huge budgets that no one was paying attention to. And we made this thing for like, I don't know, each one cost $100, and it got like 1 million views on Reddit in one day. It was on the front page of the commuter paper. It was ripped off by Hot Topic. We had to sue them. It was ripped off by Bic Corporation.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Hot Topic made these, I think it was Hot Topic, made these t-shirts that they just ripped it off. They just did a drawing of it. And we got them to stop. But like that, and then I started doing a bunch of projects. I mean, that wasn't the first project, but that was around the time I was doing things like the Bush Booth and the Hipster Traps and the tourist lanes and all these things that were the type of fun and that I think advertising should have.
Yeah, so talk me through that, because what I like about this is that it resonates with so many people. It's another, again, like a passion point. It reminds me a lot about what you were saying about one of your first bosses. It was like he got so pissed off about things. So is that really like the process? Like you get annoyed or you notice something?
I mean, for me it is. I mean, everyone has their own motivators, but for me, anger is a huge motivator. I mean, I'm an angry guy for a bunch of reasons, and I've been in a bunch of therapy. And one positive outlet for anger is you can turn it into making fun of shit, and critiquing it or throwing rocks at it in an interesting way. because other people probably share the same frustration and anger, whether it be over hipsters or tourists or government surveillance or George Bush or the pandemic. And that's what I'm trying to do with my stand-up now. And I'm very far away from where I want to be with it, but like, it's a process. And so for me, being angry, like when I get angry about something, I start writing. And if I'm not writing, I'm at least making notes. And the comics that I really respect, like Maria Bamford, or, you know, well, I'm listening to a lot of her work right now. Like, they go, "You're angry? Great. What a great gift." Now, even if it's just one word about what you're angry about that you can then revisit and start riffing on. But for someone else, anger might not be a good motivator. So that's not like a rule, you know, but for me, it is.
I notice that the comedians that I gravitate toward and the ones that I super just like resonate with me and love the most, they're always the angry ones, like Bill Burr. And even like the way Sebastian Maniscalco comes at things. I mean, he has just such a different way of coming at it. He's so emotional. And
there's actually a lot of anger in Jerry Seinfeld too. He's not, what's brilliant about Jerry Seinfeld is he's not perceived as an angry guy, but he's really annoyed by everything.
That's what's so funny though, right? It's like not about the what, it's not about the what, but the how. And like, that's also in acting as well, right? It's like, it's not what you're saying, it's like how you're saying, you were saying again, your point of view, because anger can manifest in so many different things. Because for me too, my issues and everything that I've gone through in therapy as well has been dealing with anger. Because it's just when I see stupidity or someone making a stupid comment, or just there's no validity to what they're saying. It just drives me so crazy. But then when I like put it down, I mean, I've started writing plays and short films for myself. And when I'm giving the actors or characters words to express my point of view or the anger that I've noticed, particularly about misogyny in the Indian culture, because of what I've seen my friends go through of brothers, it actually is quite healing. Like that's been a really good healer for me versus like paying $250 to a therapist that takes forever to get to in New York. Just putting it on paper and just getting it, like just vomiting it out. It's such a gift.
Yeah, it is. And then life becomes a bit more fun. I mean, I struggle having a good time in life, but it's more fun.
You have something on your website that super resonated with me. And I was actually going to bring that up because I was like, again, if you haven't seen it, I'm not trying to flatter you, but your website is just like, it's just amazing. But
thank you. All work stolen from other people.
Jealous worthy. I mean, it's just, but one of the things that you said as soon as you get on there, you said, I'm choosing to be happy versus being right. And that's making me miserable. And that like hit me like right here, because that's like often the argument I get into with people, because I'm like, let's go with team logic. Like I'm all about the truth. Like, why can't people face
like
the
I said,
truth?
you know, Hunter's on here and he's a collaborator of mine and a longtime friend. And I was on the phone with him the other day telling him how I burnt another bridge in an agency because I was telling them how shitty they are. And he's like, yeah, you're right. Great. And now you don't have any money. Are you happy?
And it's such a great point, because it's so true, because people are often, you know, and especially I've read, like, look, I've tried, okay. I've read these self-help books and everything, and they're always like, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? And I'm always like, I'm happy when I'm right. That's my thing.
Yeah, but I also, listen, and I'm not trying to be a martyr for the industry, but like, I'm a gay guy with no kids. I don't have a husband. I'm not rich, but I don't need to be abused for money. And I see a lot of people who do. They absolutely cannot extricate themselves from these positions. I was at Publicis. I don't mind naming names. It was outrageous how they were treating people. I just got up and walked out of this meeting during the briefing. I'm like, this is not the way to be treating people.
Was it with toxic anger? Was it with how was it?
They brief us and they want to see the work at 10 a.m. the next morning. I haven't even digested what this project is yet. So I'm supposed to be up all night. I go, if this is how the project is started, could you imagine what it's like when we're 2 weeks in? If you're that mismanaged, you know, aside from the fact that I had to put all my belongings in a locker, like I'm in some kind of fucking army, give me a break. What is happening to these ad agencies? But no one says anything. Yeah. No one will say anything because everyone's so scared.
So scared.
That someone will take away their job or they're working 80 hours for 40 hours pay. So until the industry takes itself back, I mean, there's no union for creative people. Maybe there should be one. They've talked about even having unions for comics, but there probably should not be one. There needs to be a filtering system. And maybe that's it. There's just so many people trying to enter the business that you can abuse so many people because there's a person right behind you with a portfolio for Miami.
Or stay in the business, right? Because of ageism. Ageism is such a, I mean.
I was at Ogilvy and I'm watching people tuck their kids in on FaceTime. Over what? Over a change to an ad that no one is going to see? I mean, this is just people trying to justify their existence through menial tasks.
Yeah, and I mean, especially with, and I'm going to be talking about this later tonight on the Mad Women podcast, which is a podcast I've come up with for women in advertising and people of color and LGBT.
No women of color and nobody should go into advertising.
Sorry, we have voices. I mean, I mean, look, but the thing is like a lot of times I just noticed that there is that even if racist comments or super racist comments or super homophobic or any of those comments, it's almost like the people at the agency didn't see them or hear them. And one of the hardest things for me to realize in advertising was that HR wasn't designed to protect you, it was designed to protect the company, which is something that nobody ever really talks about too when you first get into the ad game, you know. But that was like because there are so many people who are so desperate to keep their jobs and stay in the game. They're tucking their kids on FaceTime because they have to correct 2 words in a banner ad and take the later train. They can't go.
Well, I mean, either stop having kids, which is also something I'm trying to get people to do, or don't go into advertising.
Have you done?
I'm not going to win this campaign of no more breeding and no more advertising.
Have you done any side projects on that?
No, I'm not doing side projects anymore. I'm just focusing on doing stand-up.
Oh,
I mean, side projects are great, and if people have, I mean, I don't have the answers on how to make them. I've done a bunch, and I can share how some of them got made and how some of them almost didn't get made. And
well, you shared hipster traps. I really loved the James Lipton thing that you shared.
Oh, Jesus Christ, really? You're like
that was really funny.
It's constantly taken down off YouTube. That was a hellish thing to make. I think I lost a friendship over that project.
You did? I thought it was so well done. It looked so legitimate.
Yeah, it was really hard to make. It was what you're talking about is inside the Crisis Actors Studio. So some people might be familiar with Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton, where he sits down with students from the whatever acting school that it is. And crisis actors are what conspiracy theorists believe are the ones who are staging these massacres, like Sandy Hook and the Las Vegas shooting or whatever it is. They think that these are constructed events that are made for the cameras, and the people who are victims are all actors. So we thought, wouldn't it be funny? It was Chris Baker and myself. Wouldn't it be funny if we, and a bunch of friends who chipped in to try to make this project happen, to shoot him sitting down with the crisis actors of the day. And we were supposed to film 3, and it really would have been great, but everything went wrong. It turned out like my friend's dad looks exactly like James Lipton. So we had all that done. But when we got to the place to shoot, it was in the middle of August or July. It was super hot. One of their air conditioners had broke. So the room was super hot. And I think like a squirrel or a mouse died in the wall like 2 days before. So the place was swarming with flies. In between every take, we had to spray for flies. Even after it was done, we had to Chris Baker sent the footage to Russia to have them paint box out the flies.
Oh my gosh.
We barely had any footage to cut with. We were only able to release 1, and that, barely stood on its own with the pieces that we were able to put together. We had 2 or 3 different editors try to get this thing to be out. And Chris just wanted it done. He's like, end it, be done with this project. So there are 2 more that were never released with great actors, and they all did a wonderful job. So if anybody has money or the ability to painstakingly paint out fly by fly flies from a shoot, we even try to figure out a way to write it into it. Like, is this?
Yeah, totally.
But thank you for enjoying it. It's constantly taken down off YouTube.
I know, that's the thing. You were saying that you keep putting it up on YouTube and it keeps getting taken down, and I'm just
it's got Alex Jones in it. Also, like a bunch of Nazi sympathizers enjoy it because they think it's like free.
So tell me about, like, you tapped onto something that we had been talking about before, which is failures. Nobody really likes to celebrate them or talk about them. They're so important, especially anybody who's done acting or stand-up comedy. You learn so much more from your failures. Yeah, or advertising. And you often have, like in our discussions, have talked about how advertising is commerce meets art. And so that's why there's so much tension.
I used to think that. Now I think it's commerce meets commerce.
Now you think it's commerce meets commerce, which will bring me to another question very soon. But let's dig into those failures, because tell me about like what you've learned from them, what they've taught you. Are there, and it's so great to hear about this, because even though it sucked, it's like these are the kind of things you learn from, like whatever it is.
You have to ask yourself like what a failure is. I mean, is it a failure because it didn't go viral and it didn't get like once you do some, like, I'm very fortunate to have collaborated with a bunch of people on projects that got millions of views. So when you put something out and it has 300 views, is that a failure? I don't really know. If I do a joke and one person laughs, is that a failure? I mean, if the goal is to make everyone laugh, then yeah. But if the goal is to keep working towards work that's going to maybe make you satisfied as an artist and then hopefully find an audience to connect with, then those failures have to come along with it. Like that joke that only one person laughs at means that it resonated. There's something true about it for somebody. Now I either need to find more of those one person and fill the room with them, or keep digging on the part of the joke, you know? So if I only go out there, and whether this be a joke or a side project, or you're on your 10th round with your creative director at a place that you probably should be quitting, if you can use the failure as a guidepost to where to go next, then it's not really a failure. But if your bar is, this has to go viral and it has to have lots of likes. I mean, nowadays when I was doing these projects, there was no TikTok. I can't believe I'm at an age where I could say there was barely Facebook. There was, you know, YouTube was in its nascent stages when we did the Bush booth. So this idea of getting likes, I mean, when Hunter and I did the hipster traps, we did it because we thought it was cool and it made us laugh. And it wasn't that much of an investment to explore getting it out into the world. So why not try it? Yeah. If we had said, oh, if only 3 people are gonna, like, we put that hipster trap out as a test to see what would happen. We didn't know if people would ignore it, kick it, steal the bait. We really didn't know that you can't do a test with street art. Like once it's on the street, it's out there. Yeah. So if that's the bar, then everything will seem like a failure. And it was a failure in the sense that people, I mean, listen, even though it was 90 degrees and it was filled with flies, everybody who came to be an extra on that still writes to me and says they had a great time.
It was really good. I loved that. Yeah. No, it was a great sketch. Yeah. And the actors did such a great job.
Thanks. And it's gotten like 8,000 views. I mean, so failure, I mean, I experience a lot more failure in stand-up than I do in the projects, because it's also immediate. Like if no one's laughing, it's not like a video that you can then put on some other website, maybe find an audience for. That's it. That's the chance you have. But yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of projects and a lot of them are on my website, and my friends say, take these things down. But I think they show the way that I'm trying to go. And I think it brings the right collaborators and it brings the right clients to me by showing all of it. That's just my way. I mean,
I think it shows your range for sure. I don't know why people would, But so talk to me about so we were talking about failures in the advertising industry. I love the story you were just saying about Hunter saying like, yeah, you were right, but are you happy now? Are there any other advertising failure stories that like could enlighten people who are listening right now?
What was the last part?
Any other advertising stories of failure that like have really taught you that could enlighten the viewers right now that are watching?
Oh, about ad agencies?
Yeah, just your experiences,
I fail a lot. I mean, almost very little. Only recently is my work starting to get produced again. Like I had 10 years of not getting any ads made. And it was embarrassing to tell friends outside the business. They're like, haven't you been in this business for 10 years? Like, where's your Super Bowl commercial? How come you don't have anything on the air? And I really couldn't figure it out. I mean, I was lucky enough that I had creative directors who enjoyed my work, but clients weren't buying it. So that's a failure, and not being the one to go on the shoots. And it doesn't feel great during all
that comes with freelance too, right? Like it's so hard to produce as a freelancer.
It is pretty hard to produce because I mean, even if they do produce, they might produce it without you or change it in a way that it's really not yours anymore. I mean, yours, what does that even mean? It's not yours, it's advertising. Yeah. When I was full-time, it didn't feel good to watch everyone else go in LA to do the shoots. Yeah. You didn't get to go on. And I feel the same way now with stand-up. And it's not like I'm some great artist, but like, if I want to go up here in Chattanooga and do 40 minutes of wet fart jokes, I can be booked all month and I can make money, I watch comics do it. Wet fart jokes, big pussy jokes, small dick jokes, and people love it. And they ask for autographs and they get paid. And I'm up there talking about Epstein's Island and how they're killing children, not just raping them. And people are like, yeah, we don't want you to come back here. But I'm going to find a way to make that funny. And I'm not going to find that funny if I keep pursuing the wet fart jokes. And I think advertising is a lot of wet fart jokes. I mean, even when I worked at Butler, Shine and Stern, which I really enjoyed working there, I really liked my time there. And John Butler and Mike Shine were awfully generous to let me stay there, even though I was getting almost nothing produced. But when they did let me go, and it was during layoffs, they were like, hey, Jeff, you know, you got 30 seconds in these commercials and your setups take like 30 seconds. You know, we're not doing, just have something fall on somebody's head or make a funny noise at the end. You've got 30 seconds.
For
and you have to also have a title card. So you've got like 25 seconds.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm really, 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 really lucky that I've worked in advertising as much as I hate it, because I don't think things like the hipster traps or the tourist lanes or the Bush booth, all those things, advertising and to some degree, improv, teaches you to get to it quickly.
You got to get to it fast.
Why don't I tell you this? This is why I also wish, and this sounds like a very old man thing to say, but I'm an old man, so I get to do it. Kids today should learn more print, because if you can tell the story in one frame, you can tell it anywhere. Print. So the hipster traps exist as a complete story in one frame. The tourist lanes exists as one frame. If you even, and I'm not comparing myself to Deshpande, but like the ready-mades, you don't have to see them to understand the story. You get it in one encapsulated image. You understand it. So all these things, usually you could just see the picture and see a headline and kind of get the idea. And we were doing these projects, 10 years ago. Nowadays, that's the only way a project is consumed. Most people, I think, myself included, if I'm being honest, would admit we've shared things online without reading the whole thing, without even reading the article. It's picture headline, flash card. Oh, look at this thing. It's funny.
But that's what you were talking about.
It's meme culture. It's meme thinking.
Yeah, I mean, but that's what you were talking about. Even like when you were saying about the designer who created, that umbrella with the sky under it, we get it in a heartbeat. It's so fast. And that's what a really good print ad will do. I mean, some of my favorite ones that were like porn to me were like all the headlines for The Economist. But that was also back in the day when people had a timeline to actually craft a headline, to write it, to come back to work the next day and
it's
be
not
able
just
to
the
look
time.
at that headline.
Yeah, it's not just the time, but also who's in charge. Now, again, this sounds like an old man thing. But like, and I really don't like saying that millennials or young people are entitled. I think it's not completely true. I think they had a very different culture that they grew up in. So of course they're going to be different types of people. It's a whole different discussion. But you never expected to go into Sal's office with your first round being accepted. Mm-hmm. If you did, you were kind of lucky. Yeah. Even if there was great work in there. And I know people who work at Crispin, I've heard that at Crispin, the garbage cans were lined with gold lion winning ideas, This idea of going back and searching further. When I've done this as a creative director lately, and granted it's been as a freelance creative director, so some people don't want to listen to the guy who doesn't work there. They're bothered by being asked to do more. It's like, well, I've done it. Now I can't tell if it's because they're overworked and now it's an annoyance, but every project seems like a chore. And there's no time to go back and do it again. And if you push back on some of these people, I've been told, even though I've tried to be gentle in saying, hey, there's a better idea in here than what you're doing, they take that as abuse.
Insult, abuse, trigger, like all of those words. Yeah.
Get a fucking tougher skin, or don't, or just do shit work. But like, that's like, I mean, comedy is much more brutal than advertising, but advertising used to be more brutal, and you had to kind of get better work through the door. And now, I mean, I don't know if it's a product of, it's just because it's like a fast food conveyor belt line of like, let's just get it done. And I'm sure there are agencies where they're doing it in wonderful ways. I just haven't been exposed to that many of them.
So I have a question that has come up, and I know you want to answer lots of questions, and I've allocated time for that for sure. My last question to you is, all these celebrities that are now starting their own ad agencies, creating their own work, creating work that is just like out there, like you were just saying that the trash can like lined with gold lions. And they're just putting out ideas, and they're just like, fuck it, I'm going to fucking put some ideas out, and I want Rick Moranis in my ad, and I just want to be in an ad with them. And they're starting their own agencies, and they're having a blast, and they're producing all sorts of shit. What are your thoughts on that? I'm so fascinated to know.
I haven't really thought that much about it.
Really?
No, I mean, you mean like Ryan Reynolds and those guys?
Reynolds. I mean, like there's so many celebrities now that are just going into the ad game.
I mean, the reality is, if you're a celebrity, I mean, not the reality, my take on it is, if you're a celebrity, you are a media channel at that point, because if you have followers, if you have 3 million, 4 million followers, that's more of a share than you can deliver with some basic cable, so they're media companies being led by someone whose name hopefully means something. Like Ryan Reynolds has his name attached to it and his celebrity status attached to it. So he probably wants to put good quality out the door. So I imagine it might be good. On the flip side, I've heard that there are these big companies that will make Christina Aguilera like the CCO, or Justin Timberlake. That's, at one point Justin Timberlake was the new CCO of the chief creative officer of some company. I think that's just to get some attention for the week in the newspaper. And they're not really invested in product development or working day to day on what that brand image is. But if you're a celebrity and you've got an audience, why not deliver that audience to a brand? If you're in control of the output, I think it's a great idea. I wish I could do it.
So here's here's our first question from Luis, and it is: in this era of redefining institutions, such as defund the police, do we have the opportunity here to reconstruct agencies, or are they intrinsically bad?
No, ad agencies are not intrinsically bad. Anything can be restructured. I think it would be a challenge to find a lot of people willing to take the risk. So yeah, it all can be changed. Everything can be changed. All this could be torn down. And I think listen, I'm for tearing down this entire system. The trouble is I don't really know what to replace it with. So if you don't have a replacement, and tearing down is one thing. You can't be like the Republicans with healthcare and say we're going to repeal but not have anything to replace it with. So if you have a better model, I suggest trying it. Try it on your own with one client. Try it on your own with a local bakery and try to see what a different process or a different structure would look like. Maybe incorporate, I don't think you can have, like a BBDO. And I really liked BBDO. And I don't think when I was at BBDO New York, I don't think it was that problematic. And at least for me as a white dude, it wasn't a problem. But I'm gay, but whatever. They let me run my department with Arturo the way we wanted to run it. And we made systemic, real changes from who got hired and how they got hired and what the level of quality had to be, and everything from when you had to come into work to how you presented work we changed. If you're working at a big company owned by Omnicom, I don't think you have a chance of changing that structure. Mm-hmm. If that doesn't answer her question, please rephrase it. I want everyone to
if you want to add on to that question, I've got the Q&A portion opened up here, so please go ahead and type away any questions anybody has.
People can also, it's up to you. You're in charge here, but if people want to talk, they can talk to me. I don't know if you've allowed that or not.
Yeah, if people want to talk live, they absolutely can. So that's part of it.
But they have to put their camera on. I don't want to look at.
You don't want to look at some dark screen. So walk me through this, because I've been looking at things on Fishbowl, questions that people have had. Like, one person worked in, let's say, strategy, and they've really wanted to move into, for instance, being creative. Walk me through how you would brief. Do you brief yourself on a project? Do you sit down and just go, this is the problem. I don't like hipsters around my neighborhood. What would I create to trap them? Do you actually write a brief for yourself, or do you just do something off the fly?
With the hipster traps in particular, Hunter and I did not write a brief, but we had lots of exchanges of notes about what it would look like and sketches. Mm-hmm. And then everything we did in coordination, in terms of what's the first step? We have to get the traps. Okay, should they be real traps? That might kill children, and I was okay with that, and Hunter was not, and so we had to make fake traps. I still think, it doesn't matter. And so, we had to find a model maker, and we went on Craig's. It was just, what's the next step in front of you? And I've talked about this before. I think I know, because I've heard from people, a lot of people's side projects get stymied or stuck because they can't see how to get it out the door. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you should worry about those things. I'm not in a 12-step program, but it's one step at a time.
Right.
The first step is, how do we get traps? All right, we can't get them. How do we make them? All right, now we got them made. How do we get the bait? Okay, now we get the bait. Do we glue the bait down? What do we do? Do we put it on the street? Do we get a chain? What kind of chain? It's little, and then it's well, who's going to see this thing? And so Hunter and I, when we went out and put that out on the street, like I said, that was a test. By coincidence, this guy was walking by and he kept seeing it. He was walking around, and he approached us. He goes, "Hey, is that yours?" We said, "Well, we put it on the street. It belongs to the street now." He's like, is it a hipster trap? We were so excited that somebody parroted back to us hipster trap, because until then, the word hipster trap was just like the name of a folder on our desktops.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know, again, advertising did help us telegraph that so quickly that you were able to look at it and get it. We were so excited. We're like, yes, it's a hipster trap. We're so, yeah. It's like, wait a minute, is it an ad? Now, looking back, that could have been an ad for Pabst Blue Ribbon. It was not. Pabst Blue Ribbon is in there. Lots of other brands are in there too.
Yeah, the cigarettes and everything. Yeah.
And we're like, nope, it's just art. And he goes, oh, can I take a picture of it? And we said, sure. And we exchanged our contact information. And then Hunter and I went back to, you know, our apartments to figure out Tumblr. This is a long time ago. Because we were like, oh, let's just put the photos on Tumblr and that'll be the end of it.
Yeah.
And then like a few hours later, we got an email from that guy we saw on the street. And he's like, hey, really enjoyed you guys' hipster trap. The internet seems to like it too. And it had 250,000 views on Reddit already.
Wow. And
so, but like on this project called Captured, which is where we had Andrew Tider and I, is another project we did where we had people in prison draw people who we think should be in prison, which were the heads of corporations that we felt were destroying the world in different ways. So we didn't really write a brief, but we wrote an outline of the project. What is it trying to accomplish? What is it doing to keep us on track so that you don't have feature creep, so that you don't, feature creep is when you try to accomplish more things than the project can actually handle. You got to keep it really single-minded and focused. And then there's just a bunch of, we made like a shared Google Doc of to-do lists and we assigned them to each other. First step is, can we get people in prison who draw? And like we're like, oh yeah, we'll just call the wardens of prisons and we'll tell them, and they'll love this. Absolutely not. These wardens, when they emailed us back, were like, not only will we not help you, we're gonna actively try to stop this. Do not give political voice to the people in our prisons, and do not attack the corporations that hire them as slave labor to do customer service.
You clearly hit a vein.
But we were like, oh, the warden, this is adorable. No. And then we're like, oh, okay, wrong move, pivot. We'll call arts in the prison therapy programs. They'll help us. They were like, absolutely not. It took us a year just to get colored pencils into the room. Gosh. We're not going to jeopardize that by doing an anti-corporate political project. Now, we were still angry. Anger, like we said, is a good motivator.
It's fuel. It's absolute fuel. Yeah.
We were now more angry that someone was telling us no.
No. Mm-hmm.
So we figured out that you can go on eBay and find people who are selling prison art. Mm-hmm. And by seeing their past sales, we were able to figure out that these are people who are either the husbands, sons, daughters, or boyfriends or girlfriends of people in prison. So we just contacted them with an email. And they all got back to us. Wow. They all connected us to people in prison. Wow. And then it went kind of viral in the prison system. Andrew and I started getting handwritten letters from people in prisons who did time with another person who had artistic talent and they got transferred. And so I'm good if I ever go to prison because I got friends on the inside all over the country. But like that's, when you asked, the original question is, do you write a brief? We wrote what we wanted accomplished. We wrote a list of to-do things and we didn't worry about how does it get into a museum or a gallery?
No,
how does it get
it's not the result. Yeah.
None of those things happen. In the end, it did result with gallery exhibitions and a book sales that raised,
but that wasn't the emphasis.
14,000 for Bernie Sanders. None of that was on the next step. You just focus on the step right in front of you.
That's what I love so much too, is about like, you know, even with people who talk about massive weight loss, you know, or any of those things, it was just, could I walk around the block? No. Okay. Could I walk down the street just a little bit that one day? And there's just such a magic in baby steps. And I think that's why also it comes back down to advertising in your 10 a.m. deadline story, because again, you had back in the day, I feel like you had a little bit more time to really breathe on something and take the time to actually make it work.
At DeVito Verde, we had almost a week and we were just really writing headlines.
And that was for a brief, that you got the brief and you had a week to
I think our first check-in was usually 3 to 4 days later and it wasn't expected that anything was, and also, I mean, this is a function of the time, but like we didn't do anything in Photoshop. Everything was pencil on paper. Not because we didn't have Photoshop.
Yes.
Not because we didn't have Photoshop.
Preach. I'm all about that. Yes. Yeah. I'm so old school that way. You don't take the limits off. Sorry. Go ahead.
Because it focuses you on the idea. If you're starting to focus on the design and the typeface and the color.
No.
You're not focused on the idea.
Get the fucking idea on the motherfucking page. Does it make sense? Marker comp. Like I sold. I just, and that's what I also think
when I have young people present, like ideas to me that are cinematic or on film, and it's all about this kind of camera technique. I'm like, that's
Or
not
look.
an idea.
Yeah.
So, and then now maybe they're right, and I'm just old and I need to be discarded. No. But I'm trying. But that's the thing. I don't think, and I know there are some old people on this call. I think the older people have they've just abdicated their duties in mentoring, and there's no real reward in it. So I understand it. I mean, if you're overworked, you're really going to now try to like, why fight for the shit when the holding company doesn't give a fuck? So it's hard, it's hard. So if you really care about making stuff that is interesting to you and others, I would say work at a small independent shop. Or I don't think there are that many young people on this call who other people might see this if it's being recorded. Don't go to Droga, don't go to Wyden, go work at a pharmaceutical agency where you can leave at 5, where no one gives a shit about the work. Not that pharmaceutical work can't be good, come on. And just leave at 5 so you can do the thing you care about. I don't understand staying till 10 or 11 or midnight or 1 a.m. on stuff that doesn't make you proud. I think it bleeds you as a young person in your 20s and 30s. It leaves you with nothing left. And it makes me really, really, really angry. It makes me want to run an agency if I cared more, but
Well, this is a great intro then back to Luis is asking another question, which is reframing. Maybe reconstruct was the wrong word for about what to do with agencies. How about reimagine? What might a better model look like? And yes, the people in power will resist this because they feel it endangers their status. They're already doing well. This is basically also redefines. This also basically also defines a challenge with diversity / equity, inclusion in agencies and beyond. So
it's not a good time for ad agencies, and I think this is why. And I worked at BuzzFeed, and I can tell you this: I should have seen the writing on the wall when I went to BuzzFeed. I don't know what it's like now, but BuzzFeed gave the creative away for free. You were buying media, and they threw creative in to fill the space, and that's the culture that we live in. I think creative output in general. And now if someone would say, oh, well, how do you explain Netflix? I really don't. I mean, Netflix, clearly, there's an audience for long format, well-done content. Whether that's branded content or advertising, I don't know the answer to that. But there isn't, I lost my train of thought about Netflix.
The BuzzFeed wake-up call, the writing on the wall.
The dirty secret is, yes, you can restructure everything, but like, how do you make money? And it seems like clients now, there's this atmosphere, and we're all guilty of it too. We expect how many of us are paying for how many are using a stolen Hulu password? How many are using a stolen New York Times password? Are we indoctrinated into paying for content? If we're not paying for it as a user, are we going to pay people to make it? And so if you're not paying people well to make it, if the margins are so thin that you're not really making money, if the creative department is not a profit center, then those people are not going to be protected. And so I don't know how to, yes, you can make a whole new system, but clients are expecting cheap work.
Yeah.
And the idea that, well, we're going to pay people a salary to think. They're just going to think about your project for a few days, and then a few more, and then maybe a few more. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to pay them to do what? Just sit around and think? Yep. You know what? I got paid to play PlayStation for hours when I worked at Saatchi & Saatchi San Francisco. But I also developed incredible scripts that I was really happy to shoot, and so did my friends. And I would say everyone was really happy with the work. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying you need a PlayStation room. I'm just saying you need time to think, and you need you need to have a structure where the creative is a profit center.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, even like with studying improv and everything, again, we got to study at one of the best places, which is UCB. And that really was like such a nice, refreshing outlet for me to go after work to an improv class and to just breathe for a second. I knew people who would like sleep over at the ad agency on these nasty couches, almost like, why are you doing that? You know, and it was just to prove, oh, can I send that email at 1 a.m. to prove how hard I'm working?
I'm friends with people in all different industries. And when I invite people to shows, the only people who don't come at the last minute are the ad agency people. When ad agency people tell me they're coming, they're not coming.
They're not coming. Yeah.
Doctors, pilots, everyone else is able to show up for the show, not ad agency people.
Right.
Well, Jesus, Mischief, I think, is brilliant. The guy that runs that place is fantastic. I love him. Gabe Wiley, right? Mm-hmm. Brilliant guy, nice guy, sweet guy. I don't know what their economic model is. I'm jealous of the work. I would imagine he's got Chris Baker doing some of it with him. It feels very Chris Bakery. I think it's wonderful. My thoughts on places like it, it's great. I don't know how they pay. I don't know how they make money. I think it's fantastic. More agencies should be like that in terms of the output. As far as stand-up, you know, I was 45 and I had been the CCO of BuzzFeed for like 10 minutes. You know, I had achieved the outer markers of success, the outward markers. I was very, very, very unhappy. I was actually on the brink of harmful behavior.
Well,
You know, I was seeing doctors and working with medication to try to not kill myself.
yeah.
And I don't want to dwell on that, but I mean, it was a motivator. And I said, well, listen, if I'm just done, well, then I can just be done with this version of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I took a bunch of classes and things that were really foreign to me, all at the same time: Spanish, jiu-jitsu, and stand-up. And the reality is stand-up is pretty adjacent to advertising. So it was like a guy in roofing going into aluminum siding. It wasn't like I really made a huge change. But I really tried to short circuit my brain. And in doing that, I reevaluated a lot of things. And I knew that pursuing stand-up would be humiliating, and I would lose a lot of money. And I would lose a lot of the things that I really thought were my identity. And I'm still struggling with that, especially now with the pandemic. But I would say I don't think I've ever been happier, even though I'm still miserable. And so, and I'm pretty fortunate that I'm pursuing stand-up on the heels of a career that some people enjoy. So I can still get enough freelance work. I don't need a lot of money. I'm living in a hotel now in Chattanooga. I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, because New York City is over in terms of performing in public for a couple of years. And so this is my life now. So I pursued stand-up and I've done it every day for 4 years. And it's become my life. And to some degree, it's actually helped. If you want to talk about being a brand, I'm aware that to the ad world, it's like, oh, well, he's like a stand-up, we should get him. So it's self-serving, but it's not why I'm doing it. I would love to remove myself from the ad industry completely. But I don't, like I said, I've got a credenza back home. I can't let that go. That's my kid.
So tell me, but you have this story about, and again, people, if you have questions, please bring them in because I want to answer them because I know that Jeff's all about them. But you had told me that you had gone to a stand-up show and you were like, this is shit.
Oh yeah.
And you had talked to the owner, right?
Yeah. So I had gone to a stand-up show in Chelsea years ago, like 5 years ago, I guess. And it was like a bringer show, which means like the whoever was on stage had to bring people. So I was a friend of Andrew Titer's. Andrew Titer brought me to the show. Yeah. He wasn't performing. He was just in the audience. He's like, hey, come to the show. Mm-hmm. And this comic got up there and he goes, the other day I was jerking off and I came on my face. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm gay or anything. And it got like a little bit of a laugh. He's like, by the way, gay people, they're pretty disgusting, right? And like, there was like this awkward silence. So I was like, all right, where's this going? Right. He goes, no, like seriously, like, do you know how they have sex? It's fucking gross. And the room was just silent. And, I'm a gay guy, but I haven't really wrapped being gay up into my identity too much, but I became really, really angry. And he got off stage and he walked out. I don't know what compelled me. I just got up out of my seat and I followed him. I wasn't going to attack him. I was just really curious. I was like, what?
You followed this stand-up comedian who made fun of gay people with no point at the end of his joke.
Yeah.
Outside onto the street.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I looked for him and I couldn't, and he was down in the green room and I went down and talked to him. I go, what was that? He's like, what? He's like, I'm like, the gay stuff. He's like, oh yeah, it didn't really work. I go, well, what was your idea? He's like, well, my idea was that gay people were gross, but I didn't really have much. I go, well, that's not real. That's kind of just like hate speech, man. Right. I go, if you really don't like gay people, you could have said this. You could have said this. You could have said this. I kind of fixed his act for him. Yeah. And the booker was there. And first I was causing a scene and they asked me to leave. I go, I'm not going to leave. This guy needs to leave. And they go, this guy's a comic. I go, this guy's a guy with a microphone. He's not a fucking comic. And then the booker was like, hey, you're funny. You should try this. I have a stand-up class that you could take. I'm like, fuck you and your class. You can't teach people to be funny. But then a year later, when I was suicidal and signing up for classes, I took him up on it. I'm like, hey, you offered me a class a year ago. I want it. And I took the class, and what the class was useful in, just like these ad classes probably, is the deadlines. You need to have a real also for your side projects.
It's a rush.
You gotta have a deadline.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a community, I mean, stand-up is a community of people who keep you honest, in New York at least, not so much down here, because it's hard to form a community down here. But you need people who are gonna be like, hey, you need to bring new material on Thursday. Hey, you need to, that joke that you wrote.
Yep, they're counting on you. Yep.
It's supposed to be 3 minutes now. What's going on, man?
Yeah.
And if you don't, so you really, and I do that for other comics that I really enjoy. So
Delaney told me that one time at UCB. He was like, you know how to write your own sketch show, Sunita? He's like, you say you're going to do the sketch show on this day. And he's like, then you're going to write it. You're going to have to.
Even more than that, rent the fucking theater.
Put the money down. Yeah.
Now you're in it. Now you're in it. You
have to. And that's why the playwriting course I also took too. It's everyone's waiting on your play to be written the next week. It has to be advanced. Otherwise you're going to look like an idiot. And that humiliation is just actually a really fantastic thing because it's such a motivator. And so I love that I love that you went after the guy. You're trying to figure out his concept because that is like advertising. Like, what's your big idea? What's your nugget? What's your piggy bank?
I just couldn't believe this guy got up in Chelsea, New York and did this. I'm like, what was it? What's happening in this guy's head? I was just so curious.
There was nothing. I mean, there was nothing. It wasn't the piggy bank that you could get the money out of. There was nothing in it. And you were trying to fix it, which ties hand in hand with advertising. Louis, man, you're on fire. Maybe you'll try to answer the live question. Any ideas on how an agency or even a freelancer can fight for and market the value of thinking when people don't see it's valued for creative output, as you illustrated? So I'm going to try the live thing.
Okay.
Could we try the live thing? We would like to answer this question live. Wait, can we bring them on, Josh?
Yeah,
no, we can't.
Oh, look at all these questions in the area.
I know, it's great.
Hold on a second.
Oh, we're gonna bring him live.
Oh, look at that. Well, Deanna asked what I was going to be for Halloween. She asked that a while ago. So
hello.
I'm either going to
go.
Louis, hi.
Hi. Can we see you?
There's no option to turn on video.
Yeah,
I would.
You can only do audio.
Probably better off.
Well, Deanna, you're not going to get your question.
Well, you've been asking some great questions, so go ahead with your question, Louis.
Sorry,
Louis,
thank you. You know, it's really just what you read. Like you were just explaining so well, like how people there's thinking involved, and you're going to think about this stuff for a week, and you're just going to ruminate on this and come up with all these ideas, and which one of these are going to work. You know, there's a process that's the sausage factory side of coming up with the executions, and that isn't valued, as you explained really well. So how do we sell that? How do we convince people of the value of that?
You're asking somebody who's unemployed. You realize?
I know, right? So like, well,
I mean, let me share a story with you. And again, I'm at the end of my. I think I'm towards the end of my life. I don't mind mentioning names. When I was at BuzzFeed, John Steinberg was the president, and I was supposed to be their chief creative officer. And I'm using BuzzFeed because I think it's a good stand-in for anything in the modern media culture. And Sony was coming to us. Oh, I probably really shouldn't be saying this is being recorded. Sony was coming to us, and they wanted to drop almost $1 million on BuzzFeed. And up at that point, God, wait, Sunita, where is this going to be seen?
It'll be on our website.
The world stage. I mean, whatever.
Yeah,
I think what people are loving is that you keep it real.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, it wasn't Sony. I think it was a company called Boney. I think they made bones. It was like a bone company in Japan.
I heard of them.
Yeah, Boney. Yeah, they wanted to advertise their bones. I got confused. I thought it was Sony. I'm so sorry. It was Boney, and they make bones in Japan, and they wanted to advertise their bones on BuzzFeed, and they had almost 1 million bones to spend. And so I said, they were like, hey, so the meeting was on Friday, and we were told about this on Wednesday. And I was like, well, we'll show a capabilities deck. We should show a deck of what we've done for the past. You can even show the projects that Chris Baker has done, that I've done, that all the people who I had hired at BuzzFeed. You can show our individual projects. You could show what our tone is, and you can show what our media strategies would be. And he's like, no, we need bespoke ideas to make this meeting.
Oh, God.
And I said, well, if you went to a really, really good restaurant and the food came out in 5 minutes, at McDonald's, that's fine, but you'd be really conflicted if you spent all this money at a fancy restaurant and this food came out so quickly. I go, anything worth $750,000 should take a couple of days at least to think about. Then we have to actually make the deck to present it. That takes a day. It's like, Jeff, these ideas, you know, it's just for the meeting. Give me a brand. I'll come up with 10 ideas right now. Come on, give me a brand. I'll do 10 ideas right now. I'll do it right now. I'm like, is that what you think me and my team do? I'm like, that's not what we do. He's like, but that's what we need to do for this meeting. It's just to make the meeting. So have your team do that. I go, I don't want to burn my team out on work that is absolutely going nowhere when they have other projects that they're working on that are going somewhere. That was me managing down, taking care of my team, something I don't think creative directors do.
No, they don't.
Now, based on that conversation and a bunch of other conversations, and also just the way I am, it became pretty clear that they were not going to have a chief creative officer anymore. And if they were, it certainly was not going to be me. They wanted a drive-through where someone would be like, oh, you want a list of 13 things? How about 14 things in an apple pie? Great. BuzzFeed's still in business, and I'm not. So I don't really know the answer to that question. For me, it was removing myself from that culture. Could I have changed the BuzzFeed culture? I don't know. Was I the right guy to do it? Probably not. That takes a lot of time to move and BuzzFeed wasn't even a big ship. Imagine trying to change an Omnicom-owned agency or a WPPP-owned agency that has a majority stake. If the people running the shop don't really run the shop, then they don't run the shop. And so I don't really know the answer to that. But for me, the answer was to do my own projects where I had my own control over them. And that gave me enough leverage that I could work for people who I wanted to work for, who would treat me with some level of respect. And I still struggle with that. Even up until last week, I lost Ogilvy. I cannot work with Ogilvy anymore. Ogilvy is an abusive, toxic environment that should not be allowed to exist. I don't know how else to put it. It's abusive to the point that I called the head of human resources to tell them how abusive their environment is. Now, if you want to step into that, go for it. Are you going to change that culture? I don't think you've got a shot in hell. So I'm not trying to say just give up. I'm saying find your own way and bring an audience to you. This is if you take one thing away from, I'm sorry I blabbered on so long. Here's the thing. You have. I think if you go down the path that you will be led on through this industry, you will wind up as a commodity. You will wind up without a book that is reflective of your own point of view, your own way of looking at the world. And I don't just mean putting poetry and photography in your website. I mean showing how your point of view can actually move a market. Show how your point of view can actually move an audience. Show how your point of view can actually make someone buy a ticket to your show. Hopefully, people will pay you to do it for their brand. But if you go along 10 years of doing all this shit, you will wind up being, well, who's cheaper? Because everyone's book is the same. I see thousands of books. I judge the show. It all looks very similar. Not everyone who submitted to the show. So if you don't, so there's risk in I think all this is a risk and reward thing. And it comes down to, in the comedy world, it's, are you a performer or an artist? Are you there to please the audience or are you there to please yourself? I think if you're there to please yourself and you're good and you believe in yourself, you have to also be good, and good, that's subjective. But I think down the line, it might take 10 years. It's the difference between a job and a career. 15 years later, you might have a body of work that will let you call some of the shots. I'm not a big shot. I'm lucky I get to work, especially at how difficult I am. I walk out of Publicis. I can't afford to do that, but I will not be abused. And I want other people to see that too. I stood up and I go, the fact that we're being asked to do this work and no one else here is everyone's pretending this is normal. You're all batshit crazy. I closed my laptop and I walked out. They'll never hire me again. I didn't change them at all. I lost. I couldn't see a productive way as a freelancer to change that. So I think if you go into a den of snakes, you're going to get bit. I don't think I answered that question.
I think that was an incredible, I mean, I could see this whole thing that you just said going viral, but I think that that's something that I have always.
I mean, they really need to stop existing.
But the thing is, a lot of times too, in these meetings, I'm like, wow, as an actor, I'm like, this is when the real acting begins. Cause it's so like, just nobody's saying anything to rock the boat in any way, shape or form.
What I saw happening at Ogilvy was astounding to me.
So we have some more questions because your candor, everybody loves it. So I
never
joined
gonna
late.
work again.
I think this is gonna change. Okay, so I think I joined late, so I'm not sure if this has been answered. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing this right. Jiaman Peng. Is there anything you want to do that you have not done yet? Places you wish to work? What do you think you'll be doing in 5, 10, and 20 years?
I'll be dead, without a doubt, within 5. But in terms of places to work, Mischief is cool. I would love if they hired me. I don't think they're going to give me any money. I don't know how much money they have. I really just want money. I really don't care about advertising. I mean, I will always do the best work I can do, which is why I will walk out if someone asks me to do something in 3 hours, because it can't be done well. Like a real chef just won't go into a kitchen and just make garbage. So I care about what I do. I don't really want to work anywhere. I just want to do stand-up and become the best performer I can be and figure out a way before I die to find a way to take some of the projects that I've done and maybe some of what I've learned about how the media works and wrap it up in stand-up and eventually do a one-man show that I hope will help people become a bit more media literate. I think if people, listen, my purview into media is through advertising, but I think it affects news. I think it affects information. Certainly I worked at Facebook and BuzzFeed. These are things that shape people's perception of the world through the internet. And I think it's a lot like food. If you found out how it got in front of you, you would not eat it. But I love bacon, so I don't watch the PETA videos. I don't want to see the PETA videos. I don't care how cute the pigs are. I don't care that a pig is as smart as a 3-year-old
too.
child.
They're so smart.
I don't care.
Yeah.
I love it, and I want my bacon. And so CNN and Fox and BuzzFeed and Facebook, that's bacon. And it's really hard to take people's bacon away. But I think if I were able to do a set that had jokes and had true stories that were somehow relatable, but that's a long-term goal. I'm 4 years into comedy. It takes 5 just to get almost good. I'm not even really a comic yet. So I've got a long way.
You mentioned one of your favorite comedians you're listening to right now, Maria. Did you say?
Bamford. Oh my God.
Why do you love her? What is it about
everybody
her?
on this thing should get her Audible book called "You Are a Comedy Special," and then cancel your account. Get it for free, then cancel your account. It's wonderful. It's incredible. I'm on chapter 7, I think, of 15. And replace stand-up for whatever it is that you want to do. It's about 15 steps to get you to do the thing that you want to do. And for most of the people listening to that, it's going to be an hour of stand-up. How do you do an hour of stand-up? It's a revelation. It made me reach out to her, and she responded back. And I'm thrilled because I think it's a very special thing to listen to. And she's a wonderful comedian. Yeah.
So last question, unless anybody has any more questions from my end. Real talk again, because I know you were saying you don't want to go back into advertising. You want to do only stand-up.
I still want to work though. I want to pay my mortgage.
Well, then there we go. Talk to someone right now who's listening, who maybe hasn't asked any questions about this, but who has a book that they just feel is just fucking shit. It's not impressive. They want to throw out everything from their book. Perhaps they're a little bit later in life. Maybe they've just been working on freaking point of sales or banners, which is, again, this is why the sideshow was started, because we were talking about how people nowadays don't really get to work, especially politically, at a lot of ad agencies due to microaggressions in so many different ways. A lot of people don't even get the opportunities to work on the media brief unless they're one of the cool kids working there or because of nepotism or what have you. So if someone has a book that they're just absolutely ashamed of, what is your advice to them?
Make your own shit.
Make
your own stuff. If you really love advertising, and I think that you should seek some professional treatment. If you really love it, if you really love that, I think there's something wrong. But if you do, and who am I to judge people's love, right? But if you love it, then do it the way you want to do it in your own book. I mean, I'm 50 years old. I still have spec stuff in my book. The version stuff in my work section, I'm really proud of that. I think that should have existed. I'm very clear in the portfolio that I think I'm pretty clear that this didn't run. It's pretty clear it didn't run. It doesn't fucking matter. It shows my thinking. I think you should show your thinking. I think, well, I could be wrong. I present my work as if I'm being hired on my ideas, not on what really got produced. Now, is that true? I don't really know. I'm not looking for a full-time job. I haven't tried to find one. I don't know how hard it is. I don't know what it's like to be Black or a person of color. I know what it's like to be gay. I know what it's like to be left out. I know what it's like not to be the cool kid. And I would say that the only reason we're having this discussion, that you're having it with me, is because I went out and did my own thing. So, I mean, I'm not saying that I enjoyed the question, but I would hope I've answered it with my body of work, you know, and you can do the same for yourself. You can create anything you want to make. And as far as late in life, I challenge you to fuck you. I mean, not you, and I mean fuck you in a nice way. I started comedy at 45. It's stupid. It takes 10 years to get, if you have any chance of doing it. So I'm going to be what? I'm going to be 55 years old and being a comedian. I'm going to be a comic in a world on fire in 2026. Like, I mean, what are we talking about? But I don't worry about those steps. Just like the hipster trap or the bush booth. I don't worry about the steps 5 years from now. I don't care. I care about my show tonight. That's what I care about. And then tomorrow, I'm going to care about the show tomorrow.
Yeah, I think some people are like, the question is, because I do agree that getting hired on your ideas and your spec work it's the most important thing. But I do think that some people wonder about like having actual companies to show that they have work done, to show that they have that experience. And to,
well, I mean, it depends. Listen, it really depends what you're going for. If you're going to be a creative director or even an AC, I mean, listen, I'm saying all this in a perfect world. Not that I was raised in a perfect world, but the media landscape that I was raised in, or the ad agencies that I was raised in, you do need to know how to run a team. You do need to have the real experience of doing that. You do need to know how to sell a work to it. You should have the experience of closing a sale on an idea, of moving a client from being uncomfortable to comfortable with work that is hopefully strategically sound. You should have that experience. That said, there's nothing wrong with putting work that first of all, with the tools available, you can make anything. If we're the people making the work, then we should be able to make the work that looks real. I mean, granted, you might not be able to have a photo shoot, but I challenge you that it goes back to that idea of like, if it requires that elaborate of a photo shoot, is it that solid of an idea? The idea, a good idea exists as a headline and as a visual and as an experiential piece and as a TV commercial and as a pre-roll. It's an idea. So present your idea. I mean, and if you have trouble and you really think you've got good ideas that are not being seen, get in touch with me and I'll help you get them to the right people who like ideas.
Mind sharing your email address for that?
Yeah, it's Jeff. Just go to jeffgreenspan.com and you can get all your Jeff Greenspan needs there. If you're low on Jeff Greenspan, you can always stock up on more Jeff Greenspan.
That's great.
I just love saying my name. I love hearing my name. And then you can just email me there. Yeah, or hit me up on the Facebook machine.
Jeff at jeffgreenspan.com. So,
or if you forget, you can go to thatguyimet.com and you can get me there.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I was meant to buy that indiangirl.com because you had told me to do that years ago. You had told me years ago to do that.
Now I have it and you can't have it.
Okay, well, if there's no other questions, folks, thank you so much.
Deanna wanted to know what I was going to be for Halloween.
Oh yeah, that's the most important.
I'm down to 2 costumes. It's on the 31st we're having it this year, right? I'm either going to go as a scared, distraught man who's terrified that society is crumbling around him, or a slutty, scared, distraught man who's terrified.
Nice. Okay, we have one final question, and we have she said slutty, please. We have the last question from Daniel Kang, which is when humanity goes to Mars in 10 years, are you going to go and start fresh or stay on Earth? And we'll end on that.
I don't know. I mean, I think only the rich people are going to get to go to Mars, right? I mean, I don't think Mars is going to be, I think Mars is going to be like Detroit in 10 years. I don't think you're going to want to be there at the beginning of the gentrification. I think you want to get there once there's like a Whole Foods and stuff. So yeah, I don't think I'd be at Mars in the first 10. There has to be like a hot food place. I don't really cook. So. Okay.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us, Jeff.
I want to thank everyone for first of all, thank you. I should have said this at the beginning. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Sunita, for having me be part of Sideshow. Thanks for letting me judge the work and be a panelist. And thanks for everyone who listened to me prattle on and asked questions. And please protect me. If you can keep everything in the video, but like people should know where people are not being treated well. I think they should avoid places that they're not being treated well. And if I get in trouble, I mean, they should just treat people better.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm going to be starting my Mad Women podcast, because I think people need to be speaking out more in the
I'm not doing this.
industry.
I was just doing this. Sorry.
All right. Have a beautiful day. And thank you again so much
You too.
for
Thank
joining
you so
us.
much for all this. Bye, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.